was it the T-100? What was the second iteration of the Terminator and Terminator 2? How it all sort of comes back together and forms. That's like the song was doing that around the bass and drums and his vocals, and it was fun to watch that kind of come to fruition.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles, and it is a Friday episode, Freitag, and so we have a viewer's request from one of our lovely viewers for us to listen to. You know how this goes. We go through the list, pick one out. It's a song which I've heard before, so Andy's going to do the reacting, but we both listen to it. He'll then talk about it, and then I'll chip in with whatever interesting things spring to mind. So this one was suggested by one of our regular contributors, Glenn. He drops a comment in the section on the episode, The Jam Funeral Pyre, and he suggested the Jazz Butcher Conspiracy. That's the band. And the title of the song is Southern Mark Smith, Big Return.
Okay. All right. Well, not familiar. If it's the Mark Smith, I think it is. I am familiar with him now, thanks in part mostly to this channel. But yeah, I've never heard the Jazz Butcher or the Jazz Butcher Conspiracy. So let me run off, give it a listen, and I'll come back and let you, Glenn, and the rest of the folks out there know what I thought of it. That's a lot of chorus on that guitar. I'm digging that. That's you know, of the time here, it would suggest. So yeah, let's see what we've got in store here, but I'm digging that chorus pedal on the guitar. It's a nice acoustic.
Big mouth. Oh, but don't you know they only make pop records out of plastic? Right now I've got to get along, get along, get along, get along, get along, get along, get along. Well, get along just like the Southern Mark Smith.
Some pointed lyrics in there from what I caught about, you know, sitting in a bar, being a big mouth, pop records being made of plastic. It's interesting. Yeah, but aside from the pointed lyrics that I call it, it's got this kind of like jaunty upbeat feel to it. You know, a good solid tempo going. Love the, like, obviously I alluded to the effect laden guitar that kind of starts things off, but then there's this really clean, organic, bright acoustic sound that complements it really well. The bass is mixed really well in this track. It really fills out the bottom of the tune. I mean, at least to this part. But so far, so good.
Just like the Southern Mark Smith. Thousands of people are queuing for a shuttle into space. And there's a stupid mental picture of a happy nuclear family in a rocket. Oh, look, in California, everyone's got a swimming pool in their backyard. Well, me and Max and Dave and Jones, we think you ought to get out there and stop it. Hey, but you know what they tell you on the BBC. You know what they tell you, and it's plain to see. You've got to put on your lucky white socks.
gonna take that back. I really enjoyed the guitars in that. I'm wondering, are there first listen, so don't kill me, but are there three guitar tracks in this now that I'm listening to it? I mean, it sounds like we have in that part two electric guitars and one acoustic. I don't know if that's the case. Um, Maybe John can confirm me on the other side, but yeah, there was some fun happening in there, and there was a lot happening in that. So let's take it back. Also, love the little like auxiliary prick. I don't know if that's like a tambourine, every so often hidden in what feels like it's my right can. Um, but yeah, let's take it back and see if we can catch some of that again.
Shout it out now.
Great bass
For a
too.
chance to be alone. And there are millions more who'd kill if they thought they'd make a friend. Oh, it's nonsense, I know, but I have to find out where they could be living. You never know, they could be living in sin, they could be carrying shame. Gotta find someone who's going to carry the blame. Find out what makes your heart sing. Because I found out already what makes my heart sing. If I find out nothing else, I'm gonna find out what makes your heart sing. Cause I heard it was like a southern marksman. Like a southern marksman. Like a southern marksman. But a southern marksman.
I'm sorry. I know they're probably going to fade out on this, or at least that's the presumption I'm going to make, and we're taking it back because this is just beautiful. I think this is an excellent way to kind of bring everything together here at the end. They've increased. It sounds like they've increased the use of the tambourine on the percussion side of things. The guitar is a bit more open, and that's lovely. It's drawing me in. So yeah, let's take this back and kind of ride this out until the end. Yeah, that was a treat. That was a treat. I really enjoyed the guitars in this tune. Although I mean, all the music was pretty fabulous, and the dynamics were great within the song too. I think those dynamics were driven by all the different things happening on the guitars. Some what I caught lyrically was pretty interesting, and I'm gonna want John to fill in those gaps for me per the usual. But I actually found these to be quite pointed at times, and I'm wondering what they're taking on or who they're addressing with some of those lyrics. But yeah, this was This is a great first listen, and I really, really dug those guitars. All right, back to John. Yeah, this is a good song. This is a fun song. I really like it. Starts off, and the chorus pedal that is used on that guitar, that effect, just is, it's so saturated. Like you could really, really hear that. I mean, he's got that thing turned up, and I like it a lot. And then what's really interesting is like that guitar is quickly accompanied by this very bright, organic sounding acoustic guitar. So that's an interesting juxtaposition between these two very different versions of guitar. And then once the drums and the bass kick in, there's this jaunty, upbeat feel and tempo. And it gives the song a bit of a quickened pace, though it kind of reins in a little bit during the verses, but there is this like pace that's set when all these moving parts are working together. And that was fun, and had this hooky, earwormy effect to it because you found yourself like doing a bit of this to it. I caught interesting and like seemingly pointed lyrics in the first verse, where it's like something about thousands of people out there just have to be okay, and thousands of people, I'm sure you're all fantastic, I think. And we could sit in a bar and get drunk and act like a big mouth. They only make pop records out of plastic. I really liked that line. That's a great line. And then like the refrain or whatever is like, get along like a Southern Mark Smith. And then he talks about folks in line for a rocket to space, and a stupid mental picture of a nuclear family in a rocket. And he also says something about California homes all having swimming pools in the backyard. So these are all interesting observations, and I'm trying to kind of like weave them together, or was very much in real time as I was listening to this. I think I've gotten a little bit better, clear idea, but I still am going to defer to you and get to give me confirmation of my thoughts on this. But back to the music of this song, there's this lovely touch of tambourine every so often at the end of these progressions that are occurring, and I had this like, as if it didn't have kind of like, and the irony being like this poppy element to it, right? Because he makes that very pointed observation about pop albums being made of plastic. But it gives it it has the pop effect on you where you're like kind of bopping your head to it. And I really did enjoy that. Again, this like Pavlovian head bopping to that. And the song opens up more around the 2:33 marker. And this lead guitar plays with all these like different strumming dynamics, these sped up strums. And I love that. That was one of my favorite parts of the whole song. And you can hear like the quickened pace of the strumming before it and all the other instruments, save for the bass and the drums, kind of fall out. And he's singing over the bass and the drums as those instruments start to weave their way back into the song, and kinds of like reassembles itself, sort of like what was it, the T-100, what was the second iteration of the Terminator and Terminator 2, how it all sort of comes back together and forms. That's like the song was doing that around the bass and drums and his vocals. And it was fun to watch that kind of come to fruition. There are these excellent oohs and other harmony type qualities that are like injected into the tune, and it adds this lovely harmonious depth to the vocals. I really, really enjoyed that. And there was a bit of guitar around the 4:15 mark. And really the music to this point continues the same as it fades out of the song. And I love the guitar during that part. That really, I had to take that back. At a couple points, the guitars I had to take back and listen to again, because they were probably the bright spot for me. There were moments, I wouldn't say wholly, but there were moments where the bass really did shine in this song. And I enjoyed it, but I think I'd have to say the guitars trump the auxiliary percussions and the bass work in this one, in my estimation anyway. And I thought there might be three of them when I was listening to this at first. And then as the song moved on and we got to sort of that last leg of the song, the last third perhaps, then I think it either dawned on me that there wasn't a third and that there was most definitely an organ, or that there was also an organ. but I'm beginning to think that the organ was what, for a moment during my reaction, I thought was perhaps a third guitar, because when there was no singing and there was all this jamming, for lack of a better term, there was all this music being conducted. There was this depth injected that I didn't know what, and I didn't know where it was coming from, and presumed it was another affected guitar that was going on. But I'm going to think it's an organ, but you can confirm that for me. I'll go back and listen to it too to see if I can better parse out what was happening there. I enjoyed the bright sounds, the effects, the auxiliary percussion work, and the bass at times really did shine. But I will need a hand in correlating the lyrics to Mark Smith. I think that instead of, I think he's taking the piss out of the things Mark Smith would take the piss out of, and therefore he's saying, consider me a Southern Mark Smith, because Mark Smith is a Manc, right? Like, he's from what would be considered the North, and I assume that whoever the Jazz Butcher is is a Southern fellow. So he's saying, hey, you might as well consider me, the Mark Smith of the South, because I guess that what I got from it seemed like the piss take, or like what he was taking issue with, was like the sort of the movement du jour, or the perception and the proclivity of the masses, which all seem to be things that Mark Smith had taken issue with, or avoided, or had disdain for. So perhaps that's what, perhaps I came in going, oh, is he going to attack Mark Smith on this? But then no, I think it's more like, I agree with Mark Smith is more of the angle of the tune. But that's just a observation, especially with all the nuclear families and the people wanting to go off to see outer space. It's like, you silly lemmings. So yeah, anyway, fill me in. Am I right? Am I wrong? What did I miss?
Maybe. I mean, you could distill down what Mark E. Smith has issue with into two words, and that would be other people. God bless him, and I'm a fan. Okay, so first off, when we sort of go down the list and we cut this off, we also say, do you know this song? And I said, yeah, I know this song. I was blown away listening to this, because there's two versions of this song, and I only knew the first version. I didn't know this version, and this version is 10 times better, I think. I really like
this version is 10 times better than the one you were familiar with.
Well, not better, it's different, but it kicked with me 10 times more.
Is it the same song reimagined, or?
Yes. No, it's just tweaked. And there's different, but I'll go into the differences and everything.
Okay,
So it was a surprise to me, because I thought it was going to be the old version, because I didn't read it properly, and it's Big Return. Obviously, I didn't know what that meant, and I wasn't familiar with the second album and all that stuff. So anyway, a bit about the band. Now, it's really interesting, the guy and the band, and there's lots of stories, and apologies for all big fans out there. I can't go into everything because there's so much, but there are some nice little anecdotes and interesting things, and there is a cast list which feature quite a few people which you are now be familiar with, which you wouldn't have been a year, 2 years ago. So anyway, the Jazz Butcher is the alias of British singer-songwriter Pat Fish, whose real name is Patrick Huntross. It also served as the name of the band, but what he did was he added stuff on to distinguish between his own persona and the band. So he's known as the Jazz Butcher, but when they're played together, it's the Jazz Butcher Conspiracy, or JBC. And then it also became the Jazz Butcher Group, the Jazz Butcher and his Sikorskis from Hell, the Jazz Butcher Quartet, and the Jazz Butcher Quintet. So the band was formed in Oxford in 1982 by Pat Fish and Max Ida. They had met at university, and they'd been playing in some bands together. They were in the Institution, which I'm not familiar with, and another member of that band was Roland McGinty, who later formed the Wooden Tops. And they're also in another band called the Sonic Tonics, and Tonics has got an X in the end instead of a CS.
Oh, of course.
And later that became just Tonics. But anyway, Fish moved to Northampton, and he began writing songs, and shortly after he did some bits and pieces, and then he reconnected with Ida, who'd changed his musical style as well, and they were a better fit. So they sort of got together, and in sort of August, September of 82, Fish and several friends and collaborators began recording the first Jazz Butcher album. And contributors included Ida McGinty, John Silver, Alice Thompson, who later was also in the Wooden Tops, Ian Sturgis and Louis Leroy. So in November 82, Fish was approached to open for fellow Northampton band Bauhaus.
Mm.
The whimsical nature of the Jazz Butcher did not impress the headliner's goth followers. According to the Northampton Mercury and Herald, the massed audience listened politely, if disconcertingly quietly.
Mm.
Fish had assumed that the Bauhaus drummer, Kevin Haskins, he with the brushes, had arranged their spot at the bill, as Kevin Haskins and Fish were friends, only to find out that it actually was Haskins' older brother, David J., the bass player, who'd taken an interest in the Jazz Butcher. So they did their first album, Bath Beacon, and it was released in March 83. This is followed in the summer by their first single, Southern Mark Smith. And that's the one I remember.
Okay.
The second version, Southern Mark Smith Big Return, was recorded the following year in the summer and appeared on their second album, A Scandal in Bohemia, 1984. So the personnel for this, I could be wrong here, because I think I grabbed the personnel for the first version, but Pat Smith, vocals, guitar, Max Ida, guitar, vocals, Rhoda McGinty, bass, Alice Thompson, organ, and Kevin Haskins, drums. That might not be correct for this Big Return version. Apologies.
Yeah, Glenn, let us know.
I've got the lyrics here for the song, and then we'll just go into a bit more. So, thousands of people out there just have to be okay. There's thousands of people, and I'm sure you're all fantastic. Oh, we can sit in a bar and get drunk and act like a big mouth. Oh, but don't you know, they only make pop records out of plastic. Right now, I've got to get along, get along, get along, get along, get along, get along, get along. Just like a Southern Mark Smith. Woo, woo. Just like a Southern Mark Smith. Woo, woo. Thousands of people are queuing for a shuttle into space. And there's a stupid mental picture of a happy nuclear family in a rocket. Oh, look, in California, everyone's got a swimming pool in their backyard. Well, me and Max and David Jones, they think you ought to get out there and stop it. But you know what they tell you on the BBC? You know what they tell you, and it's plain to see. You got to put on your lucky white socks and get on out there. If you want to try out for yourself, yeah, you've got to get out at 1 o'clock and come and try out for yourself. Yeah, you've got to walk and talk and be a girl, just like the Southern Mark Smith. Woo, woo. Just like Southern Mark Smith. Woo, woo, woo. Shout it out now. And then there's that instrumental break. And it comes back in. Thousands of people were dying for a chance to be alone. And there are millions more who'd kill if they thought they'd make a friend. Oh, it's nonsense, I know, but I had to find out where they could be living. You never know. They could be living in sin. They could be carrying shame. Better find someone who's going to carry the blame. Find out what makes your heart sing, because I found out already what makes my heart sing. And if I find out nothing more, I'm going to find out what makes your heart sing. Because I heard it's like a Southern Mark Smith, woo woo, like Southern Mark Smith, woo woo, like Southern Smith. It's nothing but a Southern Mark Smith, woo woo, guitars and fade out. So, Pat Fish has said in an interview that the title is an oxymoron. Marky Smith is incredibly northern in his identity, and a southern one would be a contradiction in terms. So he's kind of like saying the song is about coming to terms with all those inner contradictions and mysteries of life. Maybe. So in the first version, which I'm more familiar with, there's an organ all the way through, and it kind of plays the main chords and sets the melody. And the guitars are a bit more jagged and not. So this one is built around the guitars, as you say, the electric and the acoustic, and they're much smoother. The guitars in the first one are more choppy, and in this one, they're definitely softer and more melodic. And there's differences in the lyrics too, and I can't remember all of them, but the first, they say there's thousands of people queuing in the rain to meet the Pope. And in the second one, as you say, there's thousands out there have to be okay. And in the first version, he says, don't you know they only make those bracelets out of plastic? And then he changed it to the pop records. And there's a note here that someone wrote, which I thought was quite cool. It said that this could come across as self-contemptuous, but in the context of this revised song, it only comes across as kind of self-aware that what he's doing, he knows, is plastic pop, you know. So yeah,
it like pointed At himself?
Well, kind of, and the whole
Okay.
thing around it, you know. So David J's friendship with Fish continued, and he had interest in it, and there was discussions that he was going to produce their next album. However, Bauhaus broke up, and that corresponded with an opening of a bass role, and so David J actually joined, and the lineup was Fish, Ida, Jones, and David J, and that would be regarded as the first official lineup until February '85, when David J left the band to form Love and Rockets.
Mm.
So they produced a further 3 albums for Glass Records, and then as their contract ended, the band sort of fractured as Ida quit, and they signed with Creation Records. Alan McGee, who we talked about before, sort of encouraged them and they did a further 7 albums with Creation. Now, the deal offered Fish the sort of opportunity to reform the Jazz Butcher outfit. There's a guy called Kizzy O'Callaghan came in guitar, and on McGee's recommendation, the rhythm section of David Golding on bass and Dave Morgan drums were borrowed from fellow Creation band The Weather Prophets, who we spoke about recently, who were an incarnation of The Loft. Other friends and musicians made contributions to this album, including Sonic Boom from Spacemen 3, which obviously some of them went off to form Spiritualized. So throughout the band's life, the personnel changed, as you can imagine. 34 members in total, with Pat Fish being the only constant. And it's really funny how his progression kind of mimics the progress of the titular character from their very first single. Perhaps not with the megalomaniac tendencies. But
Right. Yeah.
So they remained active up to 2000, during which Fish created another vehicle for sort of widening his musical palette called Sumo Sonic. I think it was more sort of dancey, electronic. And then he formed the group Wilson as well, which in 2001, which went through and disbanded in 2009. In 2012, it was the band's 30th anniversary and they decided to do another album. Not having the support of any record label, they decided to raise funds themselves through Pledge Music. Uncertain if they still have the fan support to raise the money, Fish was trepidatious as the fundraiser was launched. By the time I went to bed that night, Fish recalls, we were at something like 120% one day. So Last of the Gentlemen Adventurers was recorded in August, September 2012. So in 2018, Fish got a cancer diagnosis. He was given treatment of radiotherapy and chemotherapy. And by June 2020, he was in full remission. In 21, Fish and Company went to the studio to record what would become the last album, The Highest in the Land. So on Sunday, October the 3rd, Fish cancelled the show, citing exhaustion from lack of sleep, possibly caused by sleep apnea. So the session was scheduled for the following Sunday. However, on the Tuesday, October the 5th, just 2 days later, 2021, Pat Fish suffered a heart attack and died at his home in Northampton.
Oh.
And the album was released in February the following year. It's interesting, just a little thing here as well, that there's so much about the band and him and references, but he did put a lot into his songs. He had a great affection for literature and the classics. He mentioned Arthur Conan Doyle, John Keats, Thomas Pynchon, St. Francis of Assisi, and the Book of Common Prayer. He was known for his fondness of animals, particularly cats, pop culture references, TV shows, celebrities, other musicians, and political figures. And he had a real love for the monster stroke horror genre, which was perhaps sparked by a family friend association with Hammer film director Terence Fisher, who Fish referred to as Uncle Terry. So there you go. I will say I absolutely loved this version. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and really impressed me how much they've refined it from the previous one. So I think this was a brilliant shout, Glenn.
I'll have to go listen to the original so I can hear the difference. But I really liked this version for sure.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Glenn, because I don't think I'd have stumbled across this otherwise. I know a little bit of Jazz Butcher, but only that first album from then on. So brilliant. I shall wrap things up.
Okay.
And say, thanks, Glenn, so much. Thanks, Andy, for listening to this. I really love this as well. So thank you again, Glenn. Folks out there, tell us what you think. Or do you like this song? Are you familiar with the 2 versions? Drop some comments about the Jazz Butcher conspiracy and all that other stuff. We'd love to hear from you. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And when we finally get enough people supporting us, we can have our own conspiracy of lemurs. So yeah, thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you guys.